Hello, hello. We are live. Good to see everybody. Let me just bring this over here. We got 81 people watching, but only 37 likes. So please make sure you hit like on the video so it helps with the algorithm. All right. So let's get into it. Today's hearing. Oh boy. Right. So today was day 8 of the Julian Assange hearing on 17th of September. And we start off immediately with the first expert witness. Okay, so let me show you his picture over here. John Sloboda, and he's from Iraq Body Count. So just to give you some background info on Iraq Body Count, Iraq Body Count worked in tandem, in cooperation with WikiLeaks to really document and put forward an archive of the casualties in Iraq. Because at the time, and even to this day, I don't think we'll ever know the true extent of the people displaced, the people killed, but you had underreporting from the U.S. government, of course, and the media. So it was really difficult to ascertain how many casualties there were. And as I've pointed out to you many times before, and as you all know, I'm sure, Chelsea Manning, because of the Iraq war logs, because of the material she gave and, their work at Iraq Body Count, they were able to ascertain that there were 15,000 additional civilian casualties. Translation, the U.S. government were covering up war crimes. I mean, this is no different than uncovering a mass grave. It really isn't. Just because it's stored on a computer does not make the deaths any less real. These are people who were killed by this invasion, by this war. And the U.S. government was covering up their war crimes, and of course they wouldn't want that to be known. So thanks to Sloboda and his work with Julian Assange, they were able to ascertain that figure. And moreover, he also spoke to why they did this, right? And it's listed on their mission statement. So, he said that the reason they undertook this mission is not just for posterity, for the historical record, but also for dignity, right? These are people who died. People think that, it's just some random figure, 15,000 people. No, think about that. These are human beings with experiences, lives, friends, families, occupations. And, it is a big difference when you actually know people's names and, what their story is and what they did and how old they were, as opposed to keeping them just in the dark and they're forgotten about, right? There's a big difference in how they're mourned. And so it says so on their mission statement as well, on their own website, what he said in court today. So look, Iraq Body Count records the violent deaths that have resulted from the 2003 military intervention in Iraq, right? And, this website, man, I'm telling you something. I went through it and I started crying because it's too much. So I'll show you in a second, but it's really too much. And, just going back to the mission statement, in Iraq, thousands are buried in mass graves, never identified, and thousands die every year in acts of terror, acts of war, acts of fanaticism, imperialism, and the struggle for power. Many of them are and remain unnamed, unknown, at least to those of us not personally connected to them. This year's victims were no exception. Of the more than 16,000 civilians who perished in violence in Iraq, very few are reported as the individuals they were in life, with their name, age, occupation, and other details about them that made them who they were. The unique life lost. So that's very true, and that's the point he wanted to get across. And, moreover, what Sloboda was explaining to the court is that when they were undertaking this work, there was a very exhaustive effort in regards to redaction, right? Because you constantly hear the prosecution talk about Julian Assange recklessly publishing these cables allegedly endangering lives and sources. And Sloboda was trying to explain that that's not true, because Julian Assange actually was under pressure from all these news outlets to publish the cables. And he's the one actually put his foot down on the brakes and said, we have to delay this until we can actually redact everything properly. And it got to the point where they actually over-redacted. So they had a system where they had a software-developed dictionary that would essentially remove any words that were not in an English dictionary, right? So what does that mean? I mean, if we're talking about victims in Iraq, that's a lot of names that are going to be removed. That's a lot of information that's going to be removed, right? So the point here is that, once again, this whole narrative from the prosecution and the US government that there was reckless behavior on the part of WikiLeaks and Assange is false, okay? So not only do we have Götz from Der Spiegel and Sunday Times yesterday, the journalist who's testifying, saying that he himself, when he worked with Assange, knows that they went through an exhaustive redaction process, but also now from Iraq Body Count, Sloboda saying the same thing. Okay, so these are not people speculating. They were actually there. They were working with Assange. So they have firsthand experience and testimony of that. Moreover, we get to the prosecution, and prosecution, they started trying to attack the credibility, of course, as usual, of the expert witness. So they start out by saying, well, what makes you knowledgeable about redaction? Have you ever dealt with classified materials before? And, you know, what makes you qualified to undertake this process? And they also asked him, did WikiLeaks vet you? Was there any kind of vetting before they recruited you or engaged, collaborated with you in this undertaking? And he said, I don't know. Yeah. It's unbelievable how they try to make it about, like, you have to be qualified to expose war crimes. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Anyway, they also said that they asked Sloboda if he's aware of what jigsaw identification is. So he correctly guessed that what it means is when, for example, you remove someone's name, but because of the other information still available, the other metadata, essentially, you can still ascertain who they were, right? You can maybe put pieces together like a jigsaw puzzle and find out what their real identity is, maybe from the job, the name, the age, for example. You know, you don't need all of it, but you have some metadata that's left over. And so I think what they were trying to prove here, essentially, at the end of the day, is that, look, you were not qualified, allegedly, and you guys didn't redact it properly. And, you know, all this nonsense, it's just about attacking the witness, but they still can't prove that Julian Assange had any ill intent, that he actually endangered anyone. Again, not a single person has been endangered by WikiLeaks or been harmed. So it's all hypotheticals. It's all hypotheticals. And afterwards, they so just looking at my notes, so they were questioning Sloboda, and they said that this kind of redaction process was not exhaustive enough, and, you know, what makes you qualified to go through 400,000 documents? And I'm just sitting there and I'm watching this, and I'm thinking to myself, like, look how much value they place on the lives of informants, sources of, and keep in mind, even people who committed the war crimes. In many cases, that was also redacted. It's insane, because what they're saying here, essentially, and even though they can't provide a single example of anyone being hurt, what they're saying, what the underlying notion is that people who commit war crimes matter more than the victims of war crimes. Like, oh my God, these people that are in the cables are so valuable that their identities have to be kept secret. We have to protect them, and we're not even going to hold them accountable on top of it. And screw all the victims. We're not even going to bring that to light. You won't even know about the victims. That's what they're saying, essentially. And it's just imaginary people. They don't even exist. There's no one who's been harmed by this, right? They can't give you a single example of someone being harmed. So there you go. And I once again, I cited the article that we looked at yesterday from The Guardian, which it's just a reference to the investigation by the task force from the DOD, where they asserted that essentially no one's been hurt by this, right? They just can't find a single example. We know this from Manning's trial. And I mean, once again, I was going through the website, and it's just heartbreaking. I mean, look at this. This is from Iraq body count, right? So on December 11th, an airstrike took the lives of 3 generations of a single family, killing a grandfather, grandmother, their sons, daughters-in-law, grandchildren. According to Iraq body count's preliminary analysis, these were Haj Mumtaz Abdullah Majid and his wife. I mean, the whole family's gone. And look, you will never know about this. We would never know about these people if Iraq body count didn't do this work, if WikiLeaks didn't do this work, if Assange and Chelsea Manning didn't do this work. We never know. They'd just be completely forgotten about. The whole family. 3 generations, man. What is that? And I find this absolutely insane because it's not just that we know about them now. Nothing's done at all. And the only person who's being taken to court is Assange. And the only person who's, I mean, he's already been serving 7 years in the embassy and now almost 2 years in Belmarsh. And you look at Chelsea Manning also. The only people who've been in charge of the crime, who are being persecuted, are the ones who exposed this. And the ones who committed the acts of violence, you look at the Apache video, the collateral murder video. Oh, that's abiding by rules of engagement. What? No, it's not. And that's also a ridiculous statement because the United States, I don't care what they write in their rules of engagement. The whole fucking invasion was illegal. You can't violate the Hague Convention and the Geneva Convention. You don't supersede that with whatever rules of engagement you decided to implement. Unbelievable. So I think this was a really good and important testimony from Sloboda because this is really an important archive of work. And if you go on their website, I mean, it's horrible, man. Look at this. It's page after page after page of victims, you know. Allah yarhamun. It's just terrible. Look at these casualties. I mean, you know, what did this accomplish, this war? Look, just thousands of deaths every single year. What did it accomplish, man? Suffering, all of it. Look at these numbers. Every single month, hundreds, thousands dying. For what? All the way from 2003 till this day. It's really heartbreaking. And you go on individuals over here and you can read all of their names. Look, this is going back. Look how many pages. 541 pages. This is heartbreaking. All the way back to 2003. So I really appreciate their work. And I think this is extremely important. And so afterwards, they had the lunch break, and then we had the second expert witness today who testified. So we had Schenkman, Kerry Schenkman. He's a human rights attorney, constitutional lawyer, and he came to testify. So he started his witness statement, what he submitted. The whole purpose of it was to talk about the Espionage Act, right? The historical context. And he explains that when the Espionage Act was done by Woodrow Wilson in 1917, you know, people think that, oh, this is in the context of World War I, and so you had to look out for spies and stuff. No, it's not. It's not about that. Yeah, it says espionage in the name, but even back then, even when it was passed, this was meant to silence dissent, to repress people who were anti-war, and that's exactly what happened. And that's what Schenkman told the court, right? He said that the 1917 Espionage Act was born out of one of the most repressive periods in U.S. history. He is right. You know, you look at Eugene Debs, for example, who was running for president. He gave an anti-war speech, and they charged him with the Espionage Act. Oh yeah, this is 1918, right? And they charged him with 10 counts of violating the Espionage Act, the Sedition Act, and they sent him, I think he got sentenced to 10 years in jail, and the Supreme Court upheld this decision. It's nuts. Just because he gave an anti-war speech. Can you imagine that? So from the get-go, this Espionage Act has been used as a political tool. And Shankman went on to say that, out of the first couple thousand cases, 2,000 cases, all political, going after people who expressed an adversarial opinion, not because of they were actually spying, giving secrets off to some foreign enemy or something. It's all always used as a political tool. And the language in it is very broad, extraordinarily broad, he said. And of course, it's on purpose. So you can just blanket, put people in jail because they are saying things you don't like. And he also asserted that it's particularly dangerous because it's not even confined to just classified material. The language in the Espionage Act is in a way that you can still send someone to jail for non-classified information, right? So don't think that if someone is being prosecuted under the Espionage Act that they, first of all, that they even did something wrong to begin with, but that it's only because of classified materials. No, it's not. No, it's not. And, as Daniel Ellsberg eloquently pointed out yesterday, the stuff that Chelsea Manning put out not only indicated a normalization of war crimes because it was a lower classification, but it's also desensitization, right? People have just become normalized and to the point where it doesn't even carry the same weight. It doesn't even bear the same kind of weight that it used to when he was serving. And, the stuff that was on the servers, which Chelsea Manning leaked to WikiLeaks, it was just basic field reports, the kind of stuff that he used to write in Vietnam. It wasn't classified material. What he leaked under the Pentagon Papers, okay, I mean, not what, that was top secret, not what Chelsea Manning did, okay? They're not the same. And it's crazy how they're trying to punish Assange and punish Manning way harsher for stuff that's of a lower classification. You understand how crazy that is? And just as he said, this just shows you how normalized the war crimes have become. I mean, if it wasn't patently obvious, the entire trial is about war crimes being exposed, and no one who committed any war crimes is being tried or convicted. It's the people doing the journalism and the leaking, right? Unbelievable. So once again, Shankman raised that point that it's not just about classified materials. It could be a lower classification, and it could also be stuff that's not even classified. It's a political tool. That's the point that he was trying to ascertain. And then the prosecution, it's their turn to cross-examine Shankman. And once again, here we go. You already know what's coming. You've seen the pattern here because we've been having it every single day. You already know what they're going to do. Are you being paid here by Julian Assange to come here and testify? Why did you say these things in the past? Why did you criticize this trial or Julian Assange's WikiLeaks treatment or targeting by the U.S. government? What makes you an expert? This is a recurring theme. These questions, we see them all the time. You know why? Because every single witness that takes the stand is in defense, stands alongside Julian Assange. And they all recognize that this is illegal, it's unjust, it's immoral. So, of course, they have nothing to go off of because no one who takes the witness stand, no one who testifies is going to be on their side. There is no one. So they know that they have to start attacking the credibility of these expert witnesses, right? So that's what they did. They started with Shankman. They started asking him, what makes you an expert on constitutional law? And, you describe yourself as a constitutional historian. And he's like, yeah, well, I'm a constitutional litigator. And he said that he's given many talks and written many articles. And also he's writing a book on the Espionage Act, on the history of the Espionage Act, which in of itself is unprecedented. So it speaks for itself. And, another big point of contention was this article, and articles rather, I should say plural, in the past where they're trying to pin him down and say, oh, you see, Mr. Shankman, over here, you wrote that Julian Assange is being held arbitrarily in the UK and that he's a victim of the UK. He's a victim of the US. He's a victim of Sweden, which is true. But let me show you the article over here. So I pulled this up for you. Okay. So this, by the way, this was after the UN, they... Hold on. Right. So This is an article from 2015, if I recall correctly, right? 2016. And this is after the working group on arbitrary detention from the UN. They asserted that, Julian Assange is being held arbitrarily and is a victim, essentially, and they're in violation of his human rights. So the working group on arbitrary detention's decision is a clear victory for Assange, as well as for journalists and whistleblowers everywhere who have come under increased attack in recent years. But 2 weeks after the panel called for an end to his detention, he's not free. He remains confined to the Ecuadorian embassy, a victim of both Sweden and the UK, and their refusal to honor the very human rights machinery they helped create. Excellent point. And this is just one of the things that they cited. And, they're trying to say, essentially, the point the prosecution was trying to make is that, well, look, you've publicly criticized WikiLeaks, the witch hunt against WikiLeaks and the witch hunt against Julian Assange in the past. So clearly you're biased. And Schenkman was absolutely brilliant here because he really knew how to disarm. Being a lawyer, I assume. He was like, well, even if that were true, and he said his work has been peer reviewed, and it is true what he's saying, okay? Julian Assange is being held unfairly. Even if that's true, he's not here today to talk about that. What he wrote in his witness statement, what he's submitting to the court, his obligation to the court is not about human rights, and it's not about what he wrote before. He's here to talk about the Espionage Act and how it's been used unfairly throughout history. Oh, that was brilliant. You see, that's how you disarm another lawyer. You got to be a lawyer. So that was brilliant because it's perfect. It's like, you're trying to not just paint me as biased, but also change the subject and bring in something that's unrelated. That was brilliant. So prosecution didn't abandon it, though. And then they also started bringing up Michael Ratner, right? So what happened here is that they're asking Schenkman, like, well, okay, how long you been practicing law? And he's like, well, I raised the bar in 2013, and it's been a few years. So, okay, have you ever worked for Julian Assange? Did you ever advocate for Julian Assange? And he explained that he did, but indirectly. Okay, he was briefly on Ratner's team in a limited capacity, in a limited role, and Ratner was advocating on behalf of WikiLeaks, right? So they were trying to say that, oh, well, since you've defended Julian Assange before, I mean, you were technically on that legal team, therefore you're clearly biased and, you can't speak to this issue. And he said, no, it's nothing to do with it. It's just it was in a small capacity. And then this got extremely ridiculous because they tried reading a statement, the comments rather, that Ratner made to The Guardian about the Obama administration going on a witch hunt against WikiLeaks, right? And this Dobbin, the prosecutor, she's a smart cookie, and with this one, what she tried to do essentially, she was saying that, oh well, because several witnesses have already brought up this Washington Post article from 2013, which says that the DOJ have abandoned the case against Assange. What she was trying to do, she was citing Ratner's comments saying that the Obama administration is on a witch hunt. They're going after WikiLeaks, which would be in contradiction, right? So she was trying to establish that what's written in the Washington Post article is irrelevant. And again, he brilliantly disarms her. He's like, well, Obama did not indict Assange, which is glaringly obvious. Because the prosecution, they want to make it seem as though the case against Assange never ended, and it's not a political witch hunt. That the case was left open, and there was really lots of evidence against Assange, and there was clear legal basis to go after him. Well, okay, well, why didn't Obama indict him if there was? That was brilliant. That was really good work by Schenkman. I told you, man, this guy's, it's good to be a lawyer. And same thing we saw with Trevor Tim, right? Also another lawyer. He was brilliant too. And Schenkman was equally good at disarming the prosecution. So also this whole point that they asked him to comment on stuff that Ratner said, he told him, listen, I can't speak on Ratner's behalf. I mean, not only has the guy passed away, but can't speak on his behalf. It's great answering. And also they asked him, well, why was Julian Assange in the embassy then if there was supposedly no trials? And he was like, again, I can't speak on Assange's behalf or his legal team. It was brilliant. He really knew how to disarm every single thing. It was just great back and forth. And I don't think she was up to the task, Dobbin, to go after him. I mean, you can't even go after him in any capacity because every single goddamn thing they're doing is illegal and unjust regardless. But she wasn't able to lead him down or a certain path or trip him up or something. And right, so just to show you these articles that I'm talking about, this one is from the Washington Post, right, which I've shown you before, where they said the Justice Department has all but concluded it will not bring charges against WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. And what she was referring to, she was referring to this one from The Guardian, where Ratna said that we are talking about a serious multi-subject long-term investigation of WikiLeaks and its people. This confirms in spades that the U.S. authorities are coming after WikiLeaks and want to close it down. And so she's trying to use this to disprove the statement by the DOJ in the Washington Post in 2013. And Shankman was having none of it. He was like, well, Obama didn't indict. That's it. And afterwards, you know, he reasserted what everyone has said a million times, like every witness basically, is that this entire hearing is unprecedented. And he said that legal scholars that he's talked to never seen anything like this. You know, a journalist being prosecuted, an indictment being returned, more than one now, on a journalist. That's unprecedented. He said at the beginning of his testimony that in the past, and he referenced the Pentagon Papers as one example, you had media being investigated and charged under the Espionage Act, but you never had a grand jury come back with an indictment and actually successfully prosecute a journalist. It hasn't happened, right? So this really is unprecedented, what's happening to Assange. And that it's alarming how no one is covering this. You would think that journalists would be the first to care, but nonetheless, they don't, most of them. So, you know, they got to a point where Dobbin, the prosecution, she starts asking Shankman, like, okay, well, this was ridiculous because he really got her, and so she changed the subject. What happened is she told him, let's move on to something where you are an expert. She didn't like his answer when he said that what's happening to Assange is unprecedented and it's insane and all the legal scholars are in agreement. It's not just me who's saying that. She didn't like it. She's like, oh, okay, let's move on to something where you know what you're talking about. And, you know, if you recall a few minutes before, she's saying, what makes you an expert on on constitutional law? So she was like, okay, let's move on to something else. And then she starts asking him about U.S. law, and she wants to know what he thinks are controversial decisions, what are controversial things under U.S. law. And she asked him, well, do you agree that a journalist or somebody who steals, has unauthorized access to classified documents is not protected by the First Amendment? And he told her, well, that depends what your definition of stealing is. And he told her that this is not as black and white as she says. And Dobbin, the prosecutor, she said, so you're disagreeing with the decision by the Fourth Circuit Court? And he answered, Shankman tells her, well, hold on. Just a few weeks ago, which we covered on the show, the Ninth District Court of Appeals, what happened? They used Edward Snowden and Edward Snowden's revelations from 2013 to show that this mass surveillance program is illegal. And he stole that stuff, right? And he leaked it to the Guardian. So clearly, it's not as clear-cut as she's saying. And, you know, Shankman went on to say that if it's done in the context of news gathering to protect sources, it's done in the context of journalism, it's not always criminal. And, you know, that's further underscored by the fact that you've never had a successful prosecution of a journalist, even for classified materials, even when the cases were highly political and involving presidents, which he said before. So once again, we covered this on the show, but I'm just going to show you the court ruling from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. This is 2nd, 3rd of September, so just a few weeks ago, where they referenced Edward Snowden and what he stole, right? What he leaked. So it does have merit, and it's not as clear cut. And that was really good. That was really good witness testimony, witness statement by Shankman. And it was funny because Dobbin, the prosecutor, she complained to the judge, said she wants more time. And the witness, Shankman, he didn't answer her questions fast enough. He didn't give her yes and no answers. And, you know, the judge shot her down, essentially. She was like, well, no, that's your fault, basically. You know, she said that she found the witness to be quite helpful. And, you know, if she let him down this line of questioning, that's on her. She has to deal with the consequences. So Shankman is going to be back tomorrow in the afternoon, but he was a brilliant witness. I mean, that was really good. He didn't let the prosecution trip him up in any way. And yeah, it's good to be a lawyer because you can't get tripped up that easily. It was really good. I think it's further underscored by the fact that prosecution could get a single thing out of him. So there you go. That was basically it for today. And yeah, I'm trying to remember if I missed anything, but that's really the gist of it. You know, every single witness that is coming to testify during this hearing, they're all in agreement what's happening. It's not just, their political views. No, this is their expert opinion, their firsthand testimony. This is a wide array of people from the outside and from the inside who've actually worked with Assange. We're all saying the same thing. You know, journalists, politicians, human rights advocates, lawyers, everyone is in agreement with what's happening, that this is wrong. Okay. And the prosecution, their only route, their only MO when cross-examining is to attack the credibility, to paint the witness as being biased, to accuse them of being paid to be there by Assange directly. And, you know, when they can't have their way, they start doing these mental gymnastics. Like, for example, I mean, just the fact that the sources' lives, even though they can't show us a single one being lost, allegedly count more than the victims is in of itself an atrocity. But, you know, they're quoting media statements and using even comments from other people to try and paint the witness as being biased. It's absurd. It's nuts. I think the judge is not being 100% fair. That's putting it lightly. Like, I mean, I don't think she's being 1% fair, because if she was, she would have thrown this case out. But, you know, it's shocking because we've had so many witnesses now. I mean, you wouldn't need them in the first place. I really hope that it makes a difference because I don't know who is more qualified than, you know, Trevor Tim or Daniel Ellsberg or every single person that has testified so far. You can't find more qualified people, more seasoned veterans in these respective fields to comment on this subject. You could not. And they're all in agreement on what's happening. So there you go. That was day 8 of this sham trial. And I hope that was informative. I see we have 190 people watching, but only 143 likes. So please make sure you hit the like button. It helps with the algorithm. And please make sure you share the video. So if you have any questions, go ahead and shoot. While I wait for you to post questions, I'll kindly ask you to head on over to PayPal or whatever and support independent journalism. You know, it is a shame that no one is covering this, but, you know, we need to keep the show going. So I'm counting on you guys. And, you know, if you're enjoying the coverage and all the other stuff we're doing, then please, by all means, support the show. I really appreciate it. And of course, we also got Patreon. If you want to do a monthly contribution, it doesn't have to be much. It could be $2, whatever. All right. And I'm waiting for your questions if you got any. So shoot, go ahead and shoot. Tell me what you want to know. Yeah. So go ahead head on over to Patreon if you want and support the show for as little as $2, whatever. It really helps. All right. Let me see what we got here. We got a couple of super chats. Thank you very much to MPK Team, says much love from Iran. Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And I'm just seeing if we got anything else because I don't want to miss anybody. We got one from Mona. Mona, thank you very much. Thank you, darling. It says, yes, the body count, Iraq body count, it really is sad. It really is sad and infuriating. I was flicking through it today while the hearing was happening. I just started crying, man. It's so heartbreaking. It really is. You know, it's like they treat them like ants, like they don't even matter, you know? I mean, people should be outraged about this. They really should. So just wanted to drop in and show you some love. Of course, you already know. I think you're doing an amazing job. Thank you. But figured I'd tell you anyway. Also, dude, you really brighten my day, even though you're pointing out bullshit most of the time. Yeah, I mean, I feel you. but you crack me up, seriously. If we don't laugh, we'd be crying. That's what I was going to say. Exactly. You know. I'm so thankful for everything you do. You're the motherfucking GOAT and MVP. Plus, I'm digging your Vietnam Army movie vibe. Oh, yeah, this. Man. Yo, speaking of Vietnam, I saw yesterday Daniel Ellsberg. He actually watched my coverage. So that was an honor. That was really an honor to see that. So, yeah. No, this is an old jacket, man. It's got nothing. So... Thank you, Mona. That's really sweet of you. I really appreciate it. I really do. Thank you for the support. So I'm just trying to see here. Okay, so one of you is asking, do we know if Julian is hearing what is going on, and is he caught up with his lawyer? So yeah, he's hearing what's going on, but he's trapped behind this bulletproof glass box, and there's a door on either side, and there's a guard standing on the other side of each door, so 2 guards. And, you know, if he wants to talk to his lawyers, he has to go through the guards, right? He can't directly speak with them. They can't sit with him inside. I mean, there's not enough space anyway for his whole team, but they won't let that happen. And every day he's shackled and put through this x-ray machine, and it's insanely nuts. I mean, the level of inhumanity that's imposed on him, it's really like his father said on the first day. And of course, this was the case back in February. It's not just now, but he's being treated worse than a war criminal, you know? It's true. I didn't see any pictures of, you know, Hermann Göring or Rudolf Hess behind a bulletproof box. Even those bastards who committed genocide were allowed to sit in the dock, you know, in open air. And they even gave those Nazis time to sit and try and justify those fucking war crimes that they committed. Nazis. And they said in the court, we heard from the witness testimonies that if Julian Assange is taken to the U.S., he's not even allowed to explain his motive. You know, Daniel Ellsberg said yesterday that since he was charged with the Espionage Act, no one since charged under the Espionage Act is allowed to explain their motive. So, you know, you want to tell the judge that I did this, I exposed the war crimes because I wanted to do a public service. They won't even let you. No, you shut up. Think about that. Even those Nazis at Nuremberg were treated more humanely than Julian Assange is being treated now. You know, even Saddam Hussein, you look at his trial, which was also a sham trial, a pony show. But nonetheless, even he was allowed to have breaks, and he was treated more humanely than Julian Assange. You look at people taken to the ICC. They're also treated more humanely. They're allowed to sit with their lawyers. What is this, man? Come on. That's just one issue. Michael Epstein says merely speaking or spreading the word is not good enough. Well, what do you want me to do? You want me to break into fucking Belmarsh prison? What is that, man? Oh, come on. Okay, so listen, guys. With that said, I'm going to end the stream now and start a new one in just a second because I want to talk about, I'm still going to talk about the trial, but the lack of coverage, rather, and some other topics. So don't go anywhere. Stay on the channel. I'm just going to end this so the segment to the stream is in one cohesive unit, okay? So I'll be back in 1 second. Don't go nowhere. We got 200 people watching now, so if I don't see 200 people in a second, I'm going to be mad. No, I'm kidding. We'll be back in a second.